Base Flanker gets lost.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good to see you, gentlemen. Welcome to everyone joining us for this episode 140 of Line Upon Line. This week we're talking about the evils of abortion, and we're going to talk about that. I'm sure Planned Parenthood, maybe some talk about Moloch and a few other things associated with the abortion and the history of it. So if you'd like to start us out, Dr. Ricks.
Let's start off with the famous detective Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes says to Dr. Watson, he says, "Let's go camping." And Watson says, "Jolly good idea." So they get out in the woods and set up their tent. And they get in there, start sleeping. In the middle of the night, Sherlock Holmes nudges Dr. Watson. He says, "Well, what do you see? What do you see?" And he groggily wakes up and says, "Well, I see a bunch of stars." "No, what else do you see?" "Well, billions and billions of stars." "No, what does it mean? What do you deduce from all this?" There's maybe life in outer space." "No, you idiot. Somebody stole our tent."
Watson's a little slow.
He's a little slow. Yeah.
Well, and I forgot to introduce everybody. We've got Gary, John, Mike, Dr. Ricks, all with us tonight. And I think we got another joke coming, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, I finished it. It means someone stole our tent. Oh, after we hear this joke, I want to tell you another story about outer space that's related to that joke. But John has a story, a joke that he would like to tell, and then I'll tell the part. There's something else related to that joke.
Well, there's this boy, he was really late to the football game. And so his buddy asked him, he says, "Where in the world have you been? Why are you so late?" And he says, "Well, I couldn't decide whether I should go to church or come over to the football game. So I had to flip a coin." He said, "Well, that shouldn't have taken you very long." "Well, I had to flip it 35 times.
Oh, way to go, Tim.
That politician, when they had ties in the Iowa caucus, they flipped the coin to see who won it. And the same lady won 6 times in a row. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
60 times, 50 times, or something like that. 55 times.
I think it was 6 in a row. She won all 6 of the tied caucus because the coin always flipped her way. It's a miracle. By the way, speaking of stars in heaven, they speculate with billions of stars. There must be a ton of planets with life just like ours, or similar enough, intelligent life. They believe that, and they've been searching for 50-some years for that. But as time goes on, they learn more and more about Earth and what's required to have life on Earth. They've now learned that it's not just being the right distance from your sun, and the sun having to be the right size and right energy, not too big, but also if the sun's made out of the wrong stuff, it won't work. All kinds of poisons or radiation. They've now got all the different factors required for life on Earth are such that for Earth to have happened, as it is now, the perfect tilt, perfect distance from the moon and the sun, and there's like 220-some factors have to be just perfect. I mean, just perfect for life to exist on Earth. The orbit has to be a perfect circle, all those things. What they've discovered is the chance of that happening purely by chance is 1 out of 700 quintillion. 1 out of 7, that is 1 out of 7 followed by 20 zeros. Think about that. Which means the idea of intelligent design is now looking more and more intelligent. In other words,
I've heard,
all
and you
the
can
other
find it
planets
probably.
could have life on Earth.
I've heard, and you can find it on the web, where mathematicians have run the odds on evolution, and they have become Christians because the odds are so unrealistic, so astronomical that it doesn't fit. When they look at pure numbers and facts, this can't be. Even though their whole life, I'm sure that they were taught that it's all, by happenstance, by chance. But
so creation
numbers
becomes
don't
a
lie.
scientific answer.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Intelligent design, and they hate to do that because they know the next question is, well, who has to be some spirit being who steps outside of time, however you can vision that in your mind, but some being that's greater than the elements, greater than time.
Yeah.
For instance, they know black holes suck up not just light and energy and radio waves, they suck up time. As an object gets closer to the black hole sucking in, it slows down. I can't even explain it. I don't even understand time in an astrophysics sense. But the radio waves coming back from things getting sucked in the black hole, they're slower and slower. It sucks in time. Now, if there's a being who created and controls all that, he's got to be a lot greater than anything we can think of. But how else can you explain it?
Being in the landscape business, Doctor, being in the landscape business, all you have to do is study and look at the life of a honeybee, and you'll know that there's a great designer from the way that they can shape and mold a honeycomb in perfect 8 sides or something, I believe. It's an amazing story. So read and study the honeybee, and there's no doubt about it.
And much of life on Earth couldn't exist without bees.
That's right. Good night.
There was a study done back in the 70s, I believe it was. It was either the honeybee or the hummingbird. That scientists, we spent millions of dollars on this study, and they determined that the honeybee couldn't fly. It was either that or a hummingbird. They said it's impossible for him to fly based on our scientific study. That's just brilliant.
So the lesson here is that there is an absolute tsunami of evidence for creation.
Amen. That's right.
People choose to ignore.
That's right, Gary. Amen.
And
that the abortionists choose to ignore.
Yes, they do.
And it's relevant because the human life that starts with just 2 cells meeting, and then they do all those magical things based on genetic engineering and little molecular machines built in all those cells. It's quite remarkable. The growth of an animal and a human being, maybe even especially. And they, of course, say it's just tissue. It's not alive. It's not well designed by a life-giving God, and just not true. By the way, if you go to our website, ICG Area 4, we have a little audio presentation on intelligent design that you'll find very interesting. But one of the things that I think is most alarming and interesting is that the Bible reveals that fetuses are alive. They're not just tissue. If you were to go to like Jeremiah 1:5, if we could put Jeremiah 1:5 on the screen while I talk for a minute, it's just good to look at the scripture and think about it, and some other things that we can say. You will see that God knew certain prophets and certain people while before they were born, when they were just fetuses. Okay, do we have that?
You have it. Just give me a minute because I moved it to number 3.
That's all right.
But I got it. I got it. There we go. I don't know why it's not. There we go. Oh, we don't want to
I see it on your screen. I don't see it on the big screen yet, but does anybody see it on the big screen?
Yeah, I've got it on mine.
Okay, well that's
There
what.
you go.
Can you go ahead and read that for us, Ken?
Sure. Jeremiah 1:5. Now, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations.
Now think about that. God made someone a prophet while they were, quote, just tissue. Obviously, they weren't tissue. They were a prophet, a special person while they were in the tomb. And when you look at other scriptures like Galatians 1:15 and 16 and Acts 9:15, the Apostle Paul was chosen before he was born, if we understand him correctly. And it's logical. God put him in the right family that could afford to have him be trained by a high priest. So he knew all the biblical stuff, the Old Testament stuff, the only Bible existed. You know, he was an up and coming young rabbi trained by the high priest. But he also, we believe, went to a secular pagan university in the Gentile world. We know he grew up in a Gentile city. So Paul was picked before he was born so he would know the Jewish world and the Gentile world, so he could warn the Jews as a witness, but he could be the apostle to the Gentiles. Isn't that amazing? Before he was born.
Yes, amazing.
And the other scripture that I think is really interesting, if we could look at Luke 1:40 to 45, that is an interesting set of scriptures that Ken's going to read for us. We could talk about for a minute, because I think it's one of the most endearing scenes in the entire New Testament. The encounter where Mary and Elizabeth meet, and in both their bodies are two of the great prophets of the world.
All right. Luke 1:39. Now Mary arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste to a city of Judah, and entered the house of Zacharias and greeted Elizabeth. And it happened when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary that the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. Then she spoke out with a loud voice and said, Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. But why is this granted to me that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For indeed, as the voice of your greeting sounded in my ears, the babe leapt in my womb for joy. Blessed is she who believed, for there will be a fulfillment of those things which were told her from the Lord.
You think about that, the two babies inside their mothers recognized each other. John the Baptist knew that was the Messiah in Mary. Isn't that kind of amazing?
It's amazing. It sure is.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
And also in Psalms 139:13, Psalms of David, that he knew him and formed him when he was in secret inside his mother. Well, if we expand that to everybody, God knows all of us and is forming us before we're born. So we are.
Yeah.
If you base it on the Bible, we are people before we're born.
Yeah, we are.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What do you think, Gary?
I think it's incredible. Just exactly like you said. It's kind of amazing. I wonder just exactly. You say John the Baptist and Jesus in the womb recognized each other, knew each other. The babe leapt. I wonder just how much they did know. I've always thought that at conception is probably where your human spirit is assigned to you, and that's always been my idea of the beginning of life. But there may even be some sort of life before that, because God seems to have already had the script. He knew these beings were going to come into being. It's just it's phenomenal. It's really more than we mere humans can conceive of in totality, and that's all right. We're just mere humans at this point, but it really is an incredible thing. But it just goes to show what I say is, to me, is a tsunami of evidence of the existence of God, and everything that He says about who He is and what He does. And the people who deny it, I think many of them, probably the majority of them, are shutting it out. I think they know in the back of their mind that there has to be an intelligent designer. There has to be. So they shut it out because that would call for them to have some responsibility, and they don't want to take the responsibility for it.
Well, when we go back to Genesis 1 and the creation of man, of Adam and Eve, God, which we know, the God of the Old Testament is Jesus Christ of the New, and Jesus Christ created Adam and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and Adam stood up and became a living soul. So it is very clear God is the one who created life. We men and women pass that life down to our children. We don't create a new life. Life was already created one time in Adam and Eve, and is passed on down. The abortionists have no regard for life itself. I had some things I wanted to say about that a little bit later, but I guess I could get into it now, because you know, the scripture says you shall not kill, or the word is murder. And abortion on demand is an example of how the sixth commandment is violated in our culture today. And you were showing Margaret Sanger a while ago, but this is not where it started, because abortion is ending a human life while it's still in the womb. And we tend to kind of limit ourselves to Margaret Sanger, Parenthood, Planned Parenthood, and this stuff. But this is not a modern day phenomenon, but the practice of abortion goes way back into the ancient world, because the Greek philosopher Plato taught that every woman over 40 who gets pregnant ought to abort her baby. And the father of medicine, Hippocrates, who lived in the 5th century before the birth of Jesus Christ, wrote his famous Hippocratic Oath. And it's a little known fact that included in Hippocrates' oath for doctors are these words, quote, "I will give no deadly medicine to anyone if asked, nor suggest any such counsel. Furthermore, I will not give to a woman an instrument to practice abortion." That's an end quote. That's a quote from the Hippocratic Oath. And the early Christians, our early Christian brothers, consistently opposed abortion. Outside of the New Testament is the Christian document called the Didache, D-I-D-A-C-H-E, and it teaches this, quote, "You shall not murder a child by abortion," end quote. Where does abortion come from? It comes from the root of anger. It comes from the root of anger. If you permit me a moment, I want to look something up right quick. I wrote this out. Let's see. Yeah. Here we go. Let's see. Let's see here. Hang on. I'm sorry. I don't even take the time up. Okay. Matthew 5:21 and 22, as Jesus said, "You've heard it was said of them of old time, you shall not kill, and whoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. but whosoever shall say you fool shall be in danger of hell fire. Jesus was addressing people who read the sixth commandment and said, hey, I've never killed anybody, I'm okay. What he's trying to do is show us as true Christians we need to go beyond what we don't do to get to the heart of the matter, that we're no better off or different than they were in the heart. So looking at the progression of the human mind, Jesus tells us first that underneath murder is first anger. He's not necessarily talking about the emotion of anger. He's talking about anger that's nursed against another person, the kind of anger that leads to, angry words, angry actions, murder. The word raka is an Aramaic word that means empty-headed, stupid, or good for nothing. The word fool is the Greek word moron, and it also means stupid or good for nothing. Jesus is telling us that nursing anger in our hearts toward other people that leads us to verbally abuse them is just as serious to God as murder is. So this anger, that's built up inside because of this world of Satan, the devil's, and influenced by him, from Margaret Sanger and the rest of them that go on back into this abortion situation, they absolutely detest. They are angry and hate people. As we saw on the screen, Margaret Sanger said, we cannot let it be known that our intention in Planned Parenthood is to eliminate the Negro race. She was angry. She hated them. She was euthanasia against them.
Is that on the screen right now, Ken? The Margaret Sanger report? I can only see part of it from here. Is that on the screen right now, the Margaret Sanger quote? I'm assuming that you can see the Margaret Sanger quote, right?
Yeah, we do not want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. You see, the act of murder, the act of abortion comes from unresolved anger that leads us to devalue human life. You see? How could you kill a baby? How could you perform an abortion unless you devalued it down to the fact, oh, it's just a bunch of tissue?
Exactly.
It's a lie, but it's just a bunch of tissue. There's devaluing human life. And all the thing we look around us, the examples of genocide, killings by governments, unjust wars, greed, our entire world devalues human life. So that's why the left-leaning mind can accept abortion, because it has devalued it so much. Whereas you and I, as God's people with the Holy Spirit, we value life and understand what it is, that it's an absolute abhorrent act to us. Like Gary was saying earlier, and Mike, absolutely abhorrent act of abortion. How could you do something to that?
And by the way, I call them the elite socialist, egalitarian academics who came up with a lot of these things like eugenics and abortion. They believed in a utopian world where the people with the best genes would live, and they would eliminate people who were mentally slow, mentally ill, genetic groups that they did not like, and since they were playing God. And in effect, that's really playing God. And so they wrote about these things, and they started to try to get them going in the early 20th century. Obviously, it didn't get a lot of traction in America, not too much. But as we mentioned earlier, or what you just mentioned a few minutes ago, that by the way, Margaret Sanger said that terrible quote in the 1920s, and people have been trying to cover up for her and say, well, she didn't mean it, you took her out of context. No, back in the 20s and before that, when they wrote all those horrible things, they meant it. Out of that same time period came the communism, which is an evil empire imposed by academic elites on the poor Russian peasants. It wasn't not in the full sense, it wasn't really a revolution of the workers. Maybe they were revolting against the war, but the elites took it over and imposed the horror of communism on them. And that same group of elites, when Hitler came to power and led the National Socialist Party of Germany. A lot of people think Nazis. What does it stand for? It stands for National Socialist Party. A lot of people don't know that. When they finally got in control of Germany, and then later as the war progressed into much of Europe, he decided to apply those same progressive policies. He wanted to eliminate people that were handicapped, gypsies, Jews, and his political enemies, and it was a gruesome, very gruesome Holocaust, factory-like murder of millions of people. Because just like you said, John, they didn't see those people as human.
No, could I interject this just and I'll get out of the way? Because I wanted to introduce you to a real peach of a guy and bring it right up to today's world. That's Dr. Peter Singer, S-I-N-G-E-R. He's the professor of bioethics at Princeton University. Now, that's one of the top schools in the country. Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Dr. Singer claims that there's no difference between humans and animals, and that the dominance of humans over animals is as bad as that dominance of whites over blacks during slavery. And he claims that since dogs and pigs are more intelligent than a newborn baby, dogs and pigs have more value. So he advocates allowing parents to kill their newborn babies within the first 3 months of life if they feel the baby would never function as a full human being. When you read what he is teaching students in Princeton then, today, right now, you no longer wonder what's wrong with the world, because everywhere we look, human beings are viewed as objects rather than creatures made in God's image, and there's the key. God said, let us make man in our image. When you reduce it through Satan's influence, like we see here, from looking at people as God's image, then you know they're just objects. Then you're devaluing people, and that any time that you look at someone with how much money they have, what job they have, what education they have, this, that, or the other, you're devaluing them against somebody else. Where's it come from? Revelation 12:9, the heart of Satan, the devil who deceives the whole world. But that Dr. Peter Singer, that guy, well, God will deal with him. You know.
Our universities are full of insane people on the left. I'm sorry to say it. You know, I mean, what you're talking about, and the abortion issue, and you can go on and on with the feminist movement. You can just add these things, and the evolution. All these things add up to. They're trying to soften us up for what's coming. All this stuff softens us up and takes us further and further away from God. It softens up Ephraim and Manasseh, which stands against most of it has in the past stood against most of the evils in this world, and stood against evil in World War II. It's designed to soften us up for what's coming. Well, we would never accept back in the 50, 60, 70 years ago, this country, and neither would Britain, have accepted a beast power. But with softening up of generation after generation of hitting us with, just bombing us with all this trash, we are softened up to be able to accept it and to just devolve into what we're becoming today.
You know, it's like earth worship is definitely, trees and animals are certainly worth more than people. And you shouldn't have babies anyway, because people are bad for the planet. And this sort of unbelievable, supposedly academic progressivism is being taught at almost all the colleges in the country. It's like, you're kidding me. Yes, they're more important than people. People are the problem. Matter of fact, Europe is so progressive, at least Western and Central Europe is so progressive, that euthanasia, they've been making laws making euthanasia easier and easier and easier. So, for instance, especially with government paid for health care, the most expensive part of health care is your last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So the government's eager to cooperate, and they used to make it harder. Now, one relative and a cooperative doctor can just easily sign off. Yeah, my dad has some medical problems, and he's not feeling well. And they're actually starting to sell this in America, too, as part of Obamacare. Let's pop them some pills and let them go to sleep. Now, according to one article I read, not only it has two advantages. The younger people don't have to be burdened with care for their elderly parents or grandparents, and also they can get to the inheritance sooner. That's how callous the world's become.
Except they're trying to take that away too. There won't be any inheritance. The government wants it.
Yeah, the death tax. Yeah, there won't be too much of that left unless you're really got. Well, anyway, and those concepts are what Hitler used. Just this is a minor aside, but it might be worth just mentioning. I think it cost Hitler the war. He could have used those Jewish scientists to compete with the West, but he felt that the Slavic people of Eastern Europe were not as smart as the German people. So when they started World War II, he actually told them, the soldiers, to be mean and mistreat the Slavic people of Eastern Europe and Russia. And the German army started to win at first, and they did mistreat them. A lot of the, when they went to places like Ukraine, they thought the German troops were there to liberate them from the horrors of communism. But because Hitler was such a racist, he felt so much better than the Slavic people that he mistreated them so badly that, well, you know what happened. The Russian people united against the German army and fought like, well, it became one of the most brutal wars in the past. And obviously, the Russians taught Hitler a bitter lesson, plus his own stupidity. But the point I'm getting at, you start thinking that other groups are not as good as you are, and you start underestimating your enemies, and you do horrible things. That's what comes from that kind of elitist thinking.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention it because you can look at it from the German point of view. Hitler and his elitist ideology led Germany to horrible disaster. You almost have to feel sorry for them. And also, you know that the Margaret Sanger wants to abort more minority babies. Mm-hmm. And most of the clinics, even to this day, are located in. And so they're still doing it. And it's maddening that these elite socialists are getting away with it. The politicians, they don't want to see it or they don't care. It's just amazing.
How many of you remember Dr. Kevorkian?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Dr. F.
That's him. Absolutely.
Or Garsnell.
Yeah.
Is it Garsnell, honey? It's the doctor in Philadelphia. Gosnell, right?
Yeah. Gosnell, yeah.
Butchered so many girls and babies and unsanitary instruments. Because he's in prison for murder. The press totally buried that story because they love abortion too. It's terrible how the elites have really messed up education and the media in this country.
Yeah. You know, brother,
out there. Excuse me, go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to say this. You know, brother, and this was brought up earlier, the God of this world, and we know how dangerous he is and who's in control. And he's gotten in the minds of politicians, of healthcare workers, of judges, anybody of the elite. And he's gotten in their minds. How else could they cut up a little baby and okay the laws to cut up a little baby and sell it for parts? It has to come from the deepest, darkest roots of Satan himself to do something like this. You know, I wrote Ronald Reagan when he first came into office. I wrote him a letter and talked to him about abortion, and he replied back to me, and it was very heartfelt. And he said, Nancy and I will do all we can to fight this evil, but we have someone that's very evil now and will never give up, and that's Satan. So, you know, President Reagan knew what he was dealing with and tried real hard, but we have someone that will never give up, and that's the ultimate deceiver, the great whisperer.
Yep, Satan's behind it.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about what you heard someone say about Satan worship?
Yeah, it's an article. I just posted it on the Line Upon Line Facebook page. It's let me see if I can pull it up here. This was a former Satan worshiper. He was in it, and he got out. And he wrote in this article that about his how he got started, and he says he heard someone mention the word abortion. So he went home and he looked it up in the dictionaries, didn't get much out of that. He went to a library and he got every book he could on abortion, and then he went back to his coven, you know, because he was in Satan church or something. And he asked this guy, he says, "What is an abortion?" The guy said, "We say a spell and there is a baby in its mother's womb and we kill it." All right. He asked him this question, "Is it legal?" And he said, "As long as it's inside the woman, it's legal." And after that conversation with that guy, he was on his way to a dark existence as an occult leader. He became a high wizard, and he said he oversaw more than 140 ritual abortions.
Wow.
Which is no different than Molech, which is, we'll read that here in a bit, but it's the same thing. I mean, they're doing it today in real life, in real time, in this country, and I don't know where they go to a clinic, but as long as they can keep the baby in its mother when they kill it, it's legal to have a sacrifice to Satan. Still doing human sacrifices to Satan in this country, and it's legal.
Yeah. Ken, I had one other story to follow up on that. This was with Planned Parenthood. A young girl was in late-term abortion, getting ready to have the child, and they tried to pull it out with a set of forceps. And as they started to pull the child out, the child tried to climb up into its mother's womb even higher and tried to get away. And so that goes to show you these little creatures have feelings, and he knew what was coming, and he was trying to decrease the harm from him. It's a hideous crime, is what it is. Hideous crime.
By the way, they have
real quick, before we get off this bit here about Planned Parenthood, you'll see this statistic quoted all the time. Only 3% of what we do is an abortion. That's a lie.
Yeah, it is.
All right? What they do is mostly, they count every tiny thing. If they give you a pill, they count that as a procedure. If they give you anything they do, the sonogram's in a procedure. And then they add all these things up, even though they're all part of the abortion process. They add them up and say the actual act of the abortion itself is a small percentage. Even though all of these procedures that lead up to it, they don't count that as the abortion. They count that as separate procedures. Also, do you know there is not one Planned Parenthood clinic in this country that has a mammogram machine?
That's right.
You know, not one. They farm it out. They farm it out to somebody else. All this stuff they say they do for women's health is a lie.
That's not what they say, is
for
it?
one thing and one thing only: kill as many babies as they can. And
every one of those procedures, no matter what procedure it is or how simple it is, has the intent of abortion behind it.
Right, and but they add them up and say, well, we only do 3%. It's a lie. You know what? Another tool of Satan and the people that follow along, pretty much, whether unwittingly or not, is language, is how you twist words. So it's no wonder that some of the leaders on the left are linguists.
Yeah.
You know, they're linguists. Like, what's that guy? Oh, I can't remember his name. There's a couple of them, but that's what I mean. That's what they twist words and they use it against.
They're spin doctors, are what they really are.
Yeah. Women's health is what it's called. Women's health, choice, this kind of thing.
Unless the woman's a baby, It ain't about their health then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. I think that's Psalms 106. And the reason that's an important slide is it's one that where you can, well, let's Ken go ahead and read it. I'll be quiet.
Psalms 106:35 through 37. But they mingled with the Gentiles and learned their works. They served their idols, which became a snare to them. They even sacrificed their sons and their daughters to demons. We're still doing it today.
It's sort of like if hatred is akin to murder, then abortion, by the same logic, is akin to sacrificing babies. It's the same sense, and it feeds demons.
Yeah.
Like that story about two dogs in the arena fighting. Which one's going to win? The one that we feed the most. The more we feed the abortion gristmill, the more Satan and the demons are going to be influencing America.
Yeah. They are.
They're coming in strong. You can also see that 1 Corinthians 10, 20-23 mentions that the pagans sacrificed their stuff to demons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what happened to the nation of Israel. They got caught up in child sacrifice. God looks at it as poisoning the land, and that's, he wouldn't tolerate them sacrificing their children to Moloch and all these pagan idols. And that's why he kicked them out and they went into exile, at least in great part because of child sacrifice. And aren't we starting to do more and more of that?
We are. We are.
And yet we expect God to bless America, right?
Right. Yeah.
It does make you wonder. By the way, just a few days ago, Louisiana had passed a law a few months ago, and I think some other states have too, saying that for a doctor to work in an abortion clinic aborting babies, he had to have hospital privileges in some hospital, reasonably not too far away, for when things go wrong. You know, in any business, things go wrong. The doctor has to have operating procedures. That way, you get quality doctors, etc. Well, the abortion people, of course, they use a lot of low-quality doctors who've lost their licenses in other states, and really, there's a lot of gangsters involved in abortion. Very low-quality stuff. They know that if that law comes to effect, some of their doctors couldn't operate, and some of their clinics would have to close. To me, that tells me they're less interested in women's health than they are killing babies. I mean, the people in charge.
Yeah.
And our Supreme Court blocked that Louisiana law.
But they did the same thing in Texas.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And, you know, we lost a great Supreme Court justice, and we're one justice away from, they're going to vote everything decent out. You know how liberals always appoint activist judges who could care less what the Constitution says or means.
Yes.
They're for liberal activism, whatever it may be. That's all. They vote that way.
Yeah.
Lockstep. They don't even think. That's where we're headed.
You know, brethren, as we watch this and we watch our country fall apart and degrade into nothingness, it makes you really want to claim and pray for God's kingdom to come real soon, to help the unborn straighten this out. And that's the only thing that's going to do it. The only thing. His mighty rule.
Oh, by the way, there's a claim that if you get rid of abortion, 10,000 women will die in 1 year from back alley abortions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the claims from way back when. I've seen several articles where they went through the death rate on women, and they proved that never happened. It did not happen. But once certain lies get started, they take on a life of their own, and they get quoted and misquoted and quoted. So everybody believes it's true. Well, if you get rid of abortion, there'll be back alley abortions, and all these women will die. Not true.
Yes.
Well, they cook up all kinds of things in an attempt to justify their sin,
Yes, they do.
make it
Amen.
seem righteous. In
Yes.
this case, they're trying to make it seem like the lesser of the evil.
Mhm. That's
And
right.
abortion, by the way, is in the long term is a little more dangerous to women's health than natural childbirth, which shocked me. That's what the death rate showed. I thought, oh, that's a shocking. And there's one more thing about abortion, because people will say, well, it doesn't affect me what other people do. But actually it does because it affects our economy. You know that one of the factors that really is big on driving economies is new young families forming and then having one or two or three kids.
Yeah.
When those families form, and by the way, the rate of family forming, married couples, family forming and having kids, it's dramatically dropped in the last few years. What that means is there are less young couples buying starter homes, and less a little bit older couples maybe buying a 3-bedroom home. And those home sales drive things like carpet sales, appliance sales, um, other tools that you use around the house, and lawn sales. And you may have to switch from a little car to a minivan. All those things are projected. And in the article we wrote, we went through some statistics that show that children are expensive. Couples with children, especially more than one, spend more money than any group in the economy for more goods and services. They actually are drivers to our economy.
That's beyond beyond the reasons we've talked about tonight, not to have abortions. What you just mentioned, and the fact that all the human capital that is lost to them, millions and millions of people, we don't know what they would have discovered, what they would have invented, what diseases would have been prevented or found cures to. We have no idea what we've lost. We've lost an immense amount. How many doctors did we lose? How many scientists? How much did we lose? What did you say, Gary?
How many presidents?
I mean, how much did we lose? You
Yeah.
can't you cannot put a value on what we've lost.
How many of God's first fruits did we lose?
Yep.
Let me ask a question here, and this is just curiosity more than anything, I guess. But out of the 5-man panel here tonight, how many were born in a hospital? I was born in a home.
I think I was born in a home. That's what I was told, at least.
I was born in a hospital.
Hospital.
Yep, hospital.
What we talked about is abortion and the statistics on it and the background. But what about the effect of abortion upon a woman?
Yes.
We haven't talked about that. Have any of you had to ever counsel anyone in your sphere of influence who has had an abortion? Has anyone?
But one thing I do know, they did a real big study with thousands and thousands of women. Women who had abortions have a much higher rate of breast cancer than women who do not have abortions and nurse their babies.
Yeah, women who have abortions.
Nursing your baby
Huh?
prevents or lowers breast cancer. And of course, the media wouldn't touch that study with a 10-foot pole. Few people heard about it. I also think there are some studies, and I've heard them mentioned on Christian radio, but nowhere else, that there are mental health problems for women, some women, not all, but some women with abortions. And the media won't pick that story up either.
I've got one story here about a Planned Parenthood worker that observed a little baby being pulled out with forceps and how he struggled to get away from the forceps. And she had to quit Planned Parenthood. She said she would never go back in the room again. And it damaged her mind from that point on when she saw the brutality of it and what they were doing. So it affects her mind, a lot of people's minds, and Satan loves that. He really loves it.
By the way, do you know babies in utero avoid pain and needles, so they have to, if they have to operate inside the mother, they have to anesthetize the baby. They can smile, avoid pain, and suck their thumb.
They can. That's right.
How you like that?
Yes.
I think it is bad for women. I mean, obviously, health-wise, it's bad for women, but I think it's bad for women psychologically and spiritually. But the media won't touch those stories, so we hear very little about it.
Mm-hmm.
Women who have suffered an abortion or had an abortion, their effects psychologically emotionally range from mild regret. That's those women who really bought into this devaluation of human life, to absolute chronic and debilitating depression to women and girls who have valued life. For us to sit and talk about the emotional scars and physical scars of a woman having an abortion is very, I don't know why I'm looking for a word to say, because we're talking about a woman, not us. And we do not know what goes on in their mind. I have counseled 3 different people, women who have had abortions. And it is the most heart-rending process you can imagine, gentlemen. It is heart-rending. And as Mike said earlier, we need to pray thy kingdom come to put a stop to this as soon as possible. But just be aware that if you encounter it, you have a real tough battle on your hands. It's going to take a lot of prayer, and it's something that neither can you go outside the conversation you're having with this person and seek other help, except maybe to counsel them to seek the advice of a trusted Christian counselor that you might know. Other than that, it's privileged information between you and clergy, and it's violation of the law for you to expose that. So it's very bad, and it's a terrible situation to be in. That's why we in God's church need to teach our young people modesty, decency, sex and marriage. We're getting a little pointed here, but that's what we have to do, or we're going to lose them.
That's absolutely right.
I'll hush for the night.
That was great. Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
I heard this on Christian radio. This lady was talking. Apparently, she's never had kids, but she had an abortion 10 years ago. And then she saw, I think it was one of her relatives, her friends and relatives, and they had a child that was about the age that her child would have been. And then she realized what she lost, and she broke down into tears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm assuming this is true. Being a man, I don't assume it, but people can have a lot of abortions and assume, well, when I want to have kids later in life, I'll be able to have them. But it doesn't always work that way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
10 years later, you may not be able to have all the kids you thought you could.
I have one other story to share with you, brother. It's about a young lady that had an abortion, and this is embedded in her mind. She said she will never get it out of it. Once she had the abortion, they just took her fetus and threw it down a tube with about 12 to 13 other fetuses, just like a piece of trash. And she said her remorse and her sadness will never leave her when she saw that little baby going down. It's a terrible, hideous crime, only by Satan, only by his mind.
By the way, just as far as world events, I don't know if it has any significance or not, but Trump was going to have an event at the University of Illinois Chicago campus, I guess the campus auditorium.
Yeah.
And there was a riot outside and plus some rioters inside. Now, they probably were outnumbered by the people that wanted to give a speech, but they still put up such a fuss that someone, maybe the police chief or campaign people, someone pulled the plug on it. They just said it's too risky. Somebody could get hurt. There could be a lot of fighting. Now, as far as we know, there wasn't. But what that seems to show besides that, you can't. The freedom of speech is not appreciated on campuses or by Americans at all. No, the whole point of freedom of speech is freedom of unpopular speech. Everybody's got popular speech. They don't understand that. But secondly, college campuses have become forbidden zones for those who think outside the box. Either you think politically correct, well, what can I tell you? It's really it's not a good situation for this country for higher education to become a place of limited speech. Limited speech. Now, I'm not saying someone should yell, go out and murder everybody, but you know what I mean. But things that some would call common sense now, or at least some opinions, you can't express them on a lot of even some of these campuses. Some even tiny little stuff. They're asking for the chancellor of the university to be fired and professors to be fired, and just it's like so like the inmates are running the prison or something like that.
They're running the asylum.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's getting bad. I mean, the universities have become a place where they don't want to hear anything that goes outside what they believe. They don't want to hear anything that could upset them. They have microaggressions or anything that could make them think something other than what they've been pounded into their head for the last 20 years of, or 18 years of education. They don't want to think about it. They don't want it to be introduced an outside thought because it scares them. So they get out the fainting couches and get into their safe zones, and so nobody can upset them. And that's what we've come to. That's what the younger generation is starting to look like. They went from wanting nothing but free speech to they only want their speech. Only free speech they want is speech they agree with. Everybody else needs to be shut down. What university was that woman at? She was head of the media. She was like the head of the media or something for the university.
University of Missouri.
Yeah, Mizzou. Then she said there was some reporter in there, somebody from the media in there, and he said, "Get this guy out of here. We don't want the media here. We want to have our protest and our whatever it is without the media seeing what we're doing." It's insane.
Yeah, going across my screen on the news here, it says that MoveOn.org is behind all this. MoveOn.org is behind it.
Yeah, the protest, yeah. They don't want to hear anybody that says something they don't feel comfortable with. Oh, exactly. My.
And by the way, radical socialist governments tend to do that. I mean, Hitler brought out his mobs, brown shirts, but Mussolini did, but others do, the communists did too. And basically, you censor all speech except with what the politically correct leadership wants you to hear. Any other speech is, of course, in a real dictatorship, they can have the mob beat you up and the police don't do anything. Then they throw you in jail. But it's like the college campuses have become the mobocracy. Yep. It's going to limit free thought, because thought and speech go together. It will limit what America can be and can do. And I know the media, of course, eats it up. They like that kind of thing because they're radicalized too. But are the American people that dumb that we realize that we don't want to hear any disagreements on anything? It doesn't bode well for us either, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Someday they may want to kick us off the internet, but hopefully that won't happen too soon.
We'll find a way. Hey, besides, the number one thing on Twitter right now is the Trump rally. The Trump protest ending on Twitter right now.
Yeah,
and the big question is, now that they have won a victory, they're going to do this to every speaker they don't agree with. And they're going to be emboldened by this. I don't know whether it will cost Trump the election or not depends on who you ask. Some people say yes, some say no.
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see how that all works itself out. But I do think the lack of free thinking and free speech, because they go together, is not good for America. I was thinking about our topic for next week. We're not quite sure what it will be, but we're thinking about angels for next week.
Yeah.
And I might add to people who are watching us, if you go to the Evangelistic Association website and you look at booklets, they have all kinds of booklets by topic and alphabetically that you can read, and all kinds of other articles about world affairs.
Yes.
By the way, Europe, I talked to a history guy today. Germany's having this problem now. The German media is trying to support Angela Merkel and bringing all the refugees in. And they're trying not to let the people know all the problems they're causing. But a lot of the people are finding out, and now some more parties are in a position to really shake up the legislatures in Germany, and Merkel's becoming less popular. I don't know where this will go and how long it will take.
Yeah.
You know, you can hide the truth, but so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's coming out, even though she's encouraged the media and the newspapers to not talk about the problem. And that's what they do over here too. But I think the world is headed for a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I just read an article this week on Germany where there's another woman in Germany becoming more powerful on the right. The right wing is igniting in Germany more and more because of their slide to the left.
Yes.
And we know it's probably coming, and that's
Yes,
that'll be the catalyst to fire off the beast and the false prophet.
I think they call it the alternate party, or the alternate German party.
Mm.
That's coming up against Merkel because of, well, mostly because of the refugees they're letting in, but some other problems too. And well, we'll see in the next set of elections how all this works out.
Yes,
But I think the whole world's got mad voters, and there's a certain amount of instability out there that we think will somehow show Bible prophecy one way or another. So remember, your best protection is in God.
Amen. That's right.
Although I still say vote for the lesser of two evils. But that's about
right.
what I can do. Vote for the lesser of two evils and pray.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. Have we come to the end of this episode, gentlemen?
Yes.
We have.
I believe we have. All right, good. Well, I just want to thank everyone for watching. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for participating and being on tonight. It was another program, another episode. 140 is over with, and again, we thank you all. We appreciate those who come to watch and to learn. So, again, good night, everyone. Enjoy your Sabbath, and
God bless, guys.
Yep, we will see you all next week.
Good night.
Really good. Take care.
God bless, guys. See you, Gary.
We're happy you could make it. So glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.